All right, welcome back to the Turn by Turn podcast. I'm Daniel, along with Alex, as always. And today we're going to be talking about battle passes. And I have very, very limited knowledge on this. As I was joking with Alex before we started recording, my video game knowledge is about 1995 to about 2010. And then after that, it gets a little spotty. So, Alex, explain to me what battle passes are and if I have any chance of being successful with them.
Sure. So, I kind of drew up my own little intro for this. So I'm just going to kind of segue into that and kind of why we're talking about this. Because I know I can hear you at home thinking, isn't this an RPG podcast? How did they end up talking about battle passes? Something I'm interested in is the monetization of games. I'm just fascinated by how you pay for games and the various ways a developer can make money off of games in ways that everybody's happy with. Because at the end of the day, if you're creating art, you've still got to eat. And if I consume your art, I want you to eat. So we have these, this beneficial goal that we both have of I want to enjoy your art, you want to make your art, and you want to get paid for it somehow. So maybe I'd be open to talking about more monetization strategies if you guys like this. And maybe we'll call it like Alex's monetization corner or money matters or something like that. So just to start off with monetization and sort of what that is, some of the things that I think I like and are really worth it. There's the traditional one that Daniel's very familiar with, and I'm sure many RPG fans are. You buy a game and you're done the traditional way. I go to the store, I purchase a game, and that is it. That is where our interaction ends. But I also really enjoyed the era of expansions, and I'm sure Daniel will remember that, sort of the late 90s, early thousands. And for you youngins out there, expansions were like if a developer actually worked really, really hard on a season pass and then released all of it at once to you. And the best ones felt like another half of a game for a fraction of the price of the main game. And it was really, really exciting, and there was lots of hype when they came out. They added things like new characters, entire new stories, or whole game modes. And I don't mean half-baked game modes. I mean, this really felt like an entire new half of a game being added to your favorite game. And some of my favorites of those were like Age of Mythology, The Titans, Lord of the Rings, Battle for Middle-earth, Rise of the Witch King, Star Wars Empire at War, Forces of Corruption, and Diablo 2, Lord of Destruction. A lot of these I realized as I was writing it kind of coincide with the RTS era of games, the real-time strategy era. But sometimes companies still do it with things like The Witcher 3, Blood and Wine. But this practice, inevitably, the season pass thing, or really, I guess, the expansions devolved into season passes. And a season pass is a promise of future DLC content that you can always pay for before it comes out. And I find that the DLC is not always very high quality. And in fact, it rarely is high quality. And oftentimes it should have just been in the game at launch, and I feel like it was just cut out. This practice, again, devolved into multiple season passes, because why wouldn't it? Instead of parsing out small, often low quality updates in as many as 3 separate waves of content drops. Sometimes each of those also has a pre-order bonus. And don't even get me started on all of that and how that all culminates in what we have now. But that does bring us to where we are now, and that's the Battle Pass. So a Battle Pass system is essentially a season pass, but instead of the max of 3, you get to do a new season pass every single month. And instead of just giving you the content you're paying for, the developers give you the ability to grind for it. You're paying to unlock the ability to grind for loot in a game you like. But you better hurry up, because they only last a certain amount of time. And when we do the next Battle Pass, the old one goes away. So if you have not unlocked the end of it, then you're just going to miss out. So Daniel, what are you thinking about this? What's your first sort of, you were not totally familiar with this before I said I wanted to do an episode on it. So what is your thought hearing about this?
It almost, it might just be that I'm not quite fully grasping it, but it almost kind of feels like a pyramid scheme where it's like, oh yeah, if you do this thing, it'll lead to this other thing, and then if you're able to do that thing, it'll lead to this thing, and then you've sort of telescoped out your efforts and your money beyond what you may have originally hoped.
I
Does
think
that
that's pretty good. I think you're grasping it just fine. So, um, to me, it was ridiculous from the beginning, but the gaming industry does what they do. And it's the same way that anytime they want to do anything that isn't so good, they sort of have a tried and true strategy, which is get it popular with kids. So a lot of people, when I say Battle Pass, the first thing that pops into their head is Fortnite. And I know this is an RPG show, but Daniel, you're familiar with what Fortnite is, I would hope, at least a little bit.
Yes, I've heard of Fortnite and I've played once.
All right. So, although Fortnite popularized the system, the actual first one to do it was Valve, starting with Dota 2 in 2013, and I actually didn't know that. And they dabbled with it more all throughout 2013, 14, 15, with Dota 2 and Team Fortress 2. But those were all temporary. It wasn't a full ongoing system until 2018, and then Dota 2 got a monthly battle pass. So the developers at Epic Games were paying attention and looking for a non-controversial way to add more monetization to their game Fortnite. So they adopted the battle pass system as well. And at this point, we're in 2018, and the hot thing was still loot boxes. But more and more countries are banning them or investigating them as gambling, and especially kids gambling. So game companies were not super hot on that idea because it would bring a lot of bad press. So Epic decided to go with something else. Daniel, are you familiar with loot boxes?
Apparently not, because I didn't
Oh,
realize there was a gambling aspect to them.
yeah, it's just sort of you can get almost any. Basically, like Overwatch was one that people looked at a lot. That you can get sprays and icons out of them that have almost no value. So you end up just buying a lot to try and get all of the good skins and all the good things. But as long as you can win and lose, there is sort of a value proposition, and it is sort of gambling in the definitions of a lot of different countries.
Okay.
So basically, I could do a whole episode on battle or on loot boxes too, and I'm not opposed to it if you guys want to hear it at some point. But for the sake of this, all you need to know is several countries' governments in the world started realizing that this was promoting child gambling and was leading to higher addiction rates in child gambling. So they started looking at the gaming industry, and the games industry needed something else that wasn't that. Even though a lot still do that. So Epic was like, maybe we can do something with this battle pass thing that Valve has started. So Fortnite drops one battle pass per season, and a season lasts 10 weeks or 2.5 months on average. It's roughly estimated that they make a bit more than $50 million per battle pass. But what exactly are they selling? In the current battle pass, players can grind, and by grind I mean play tons and tons of games and complete challenges. And eventually you'll unlock 6 skins, a bunch of icons, some weapon skins, some emotes, and a few loading screen variations. Fortnite also gives the player the ability to earn 1,500 V-Bucks, or about $15 worth of their in-game currency, which is especially generous, I think, actually, given that the battle pass each time costs you 950 V-Bucks, or $9.50. And this is all American dollars, US dollars, by the way. for any of our foreign listeners if you want to follow along at home. So a player can hypothetically grind each season enough to not have to pay the next season. So that's not the most nefarious thing, but how long does that take? I hear you asking yourself. Daniel, feel free to interrupt anytime you have a thought. Just by the way.
Yep, I'm learning.
All right. So Epic themselves gives a range of about 75 to 150 hours of gameplay to complete a battle pass. So, I don't know about you guys at home. You're probably a lot of RPG people, so you probably don't have as big a problem with it as I do, but I hate math. I am terrible at math, but I did all of the math for you, so you don't have to worry about it at home. Because I just care about you like that on this show. So, 75 to 150 hours of gameplay. 10 weeks is 70 days. So, at minimum, you would need to play 1.07 hours a day without missing a single day to complete a battle pass, meaning that you unlock all the things. This means that to get everything that you've already paid for, and I'm going to say that twice because it's really important, you've already paid for all of these things. If you don't finish the battle pass, Epic loses nothing. To get all the things you've already spent your money on, you need to play Fortnite for slightly more than an hour each day and never skip a day. But that's not really realistic. What do you think, Daniel?
I think that sounds pretty horrible, but I was thinking I'm not like we were talking about with DLC, I'm not opposed to paying extra if they're going to give me something worthwhile.
For sure.
Nothing you've described so far with like the Fortnite rewards sounds like something that I'd be willing to pay extra for. But like if you were to give me like another storyline within a game, that would be okay. As long as it like flowed well. Like if it just was like an add-on to the game that felt natural,
Mm-hmm.
that would be fine. But when
Yeah.
you're talking about giving me a new T-shirt or something, like my avatar gets a new T-shirt, or I get a silly looking hammer or something because I paid $200 or whatever it might be, and then I played 25 hours a week. That interests me less. But so if it was something that I would find valuable, it probably wouldn't bug me. And maybe for some of the Fortnite people, they're so in on whatever a skin is that it's worth it. So
Yeah.
it might not bother all people, but it seems like a lot of work for something you've already paid for.
Yeah. And that's sort of my hang up too. It's a lot of work for something you've already paid for, and a lot of it is targeted at kids. And the reason that this is a big deal with kids is cosmetics and things, a new t-shirt for your character is really important to kids. Because that's the only way to get new cosmetics for your character. And there were a lot of instances actually of kids getting bullied at school if they only have the default skins on Fortnite. Because, like, what are you, poor? And I don't think that that's a new thing either. Back in our day, it was you got bullied if you didn't have the nice shoes or the nice shirt that everybody else had. Those sorts of things. Or I remember when Razor phones became a thing. You were not cool unless you had a Razor phone. Uh, for if you're a kid listening at home, a Razor phone was a flip phone that was like a little bit sleeker.
The edge of it was a led to a triangle point versus a rounded edge.
Yep. See, Daniel knows exactly what I'm talking about.
I did not have a Razor cell phone.
I did not either.
I had one of those Nokia phones that are stronger than Thor's hammer.
My first phone was just a regular like flip phone, and the best quick rabbit hole. The craziest thing I ever carried was my dad sat on his phone at one point and broke it. And since I was like 13, he needed a cell phone and I didn't really need a cell phone. So he took mine, and my response was, "Well, I'm going to take the pieces of yours then." And he was like, "I guess that's fine." So I put my SIM card in the bottom piece of his phone, meaning like I didn't have a screen, but I had the number pad. And the speaker, if you use speakerphone, was on that bottom half of the phone. So I could use speed dial to call people still. So for a while, I just carried around this half a phone, and that was my phone. So texting was obviously out of the question, and it shocked me a couple times, but because there were some exposed wires. Yeah. So, and we weren't like that poor or anything. I was just doing it to make a point. But yeah, so it is a big deal for kids to miss out on. It's kind of become a big deal for kids to miss out on these things, at least in terms of peer pressure. So where I was going with that, though, is even those of us with the fewest responsibilities in the world can't play video games every single day. So let's say you miss 10 days. You got to do 1 hour and 15 minutes then for the rest of the days to finish your battle pass. If you miss 15 days, that's nearly an hour and a half per day after that. This is also assuming you're a fantastic player at the top of the food chain. If you're not very good, let's assume you're at the high end of Epic's estimate, and that'd be 150 hours divided by 70 days, if you don't miss a day, which puts you at a little over 2 hours per day, again assuming that you're never skipping a day. So the time sink is pretty incredible. But here's the kicker with that too. What if you have time to play games and you don't want to play Fortnite today?
I was just thinking that, like, I like to jump around when playing games, and like I'll pop in and play like Breath of the Wild, and then I'll hop over to Fire Emblem Three Houses. But like, if I paid for it, I'd really feel like I had to play this one game to make sure I got my money's worth for it.
Exactly. It feels like you, the player, is losing money on the deal, and you technically are. It's just a manipulative tactic to get you to play tons and tons of hours, even if you don't really feel like it. Because I'm like you, I like to jump around to lots of games. I might be I'm always playing a Fire Emblem game, just in the background. And lately I've been playing Far Cry 5. Sometimes I'll play Predator Hunting Grounds. And then there's also just the always whatever my friends wants to play that I get suckered into somehow. um, and sometimes those games are great, and sometimes they're not. It just kind of depends. But in this way, with the battle pass system, your games kind of become a responsibility. And even just in researching for this show, I saw a lot of threads of kids posting online, asking other people to do the math for them because they had to deal with annoying things like exams or family trips, forcing them to miss days of grinding, and asking if they'll still have time potentially to finish the battle pass before it ends if they play for hours a day. And I'm like, just thinking, this is not healthy. Uh, you've invested your money and you don't want to lose it. Better play more. But Alex, I hear some of you saying, I like being constantly rewarded while playing. And yeah, it is nice to keep unlocking rewards while you're playing a game. But that shouldn't be used to manipulate you into playing a game that you don't want to. Games are supposed to be fun and an escape from responsibility, and not a new responsibility all on their own. To throw it again back to some of Daniel's gaming knowledge, it sort of reminds me of the Tamagotchi pets we had as kids that could like wake you up at 3 a.m. and ask you for a snack. It kind of blurs the line between this is a fun distraction and I'm a new parent who has to attend to a digital child each day that requires attention. Did you ever have like one of those Tamagotchi things?
My sister did. I feel like the episode is battle passes, but you stay for like the random 90s nostalgia
Yeah, yeah.
for this one. But
And I hear you guys asking too, this is an RPG show. What does this matter? The thing that matters is that when this starts, we've seen a lot of evidence of how this progresses to other things, and some things it gets to slower. But like loot boxes made it into RPGs by the end. Now we have things like Genshin Impact, which I don't know if we'll ever do an episode on. It is a really massive fan base, so it'd probably be smart. But it's just such a thing. I don't know if I am ready for that. um, but that's a really good example of how this has made its way to RPGs. Loot boxes did. Battle passes are in Genshin Impact as well. So there's already RPGs out there you could play that have this exact system I'm describing in it. And that's sort of why I think this is good to talk about, because it always starts with, just one genre. And a lot of the times it's sports games and kids games. Weirdly, those two seem to be the things that start a lot of this, or mobile games. But now everything has kind of become mobile games. But that's another good example of how this sort of started there and then moved into the rest of gaming. So just to finish that analogy, I guess too, I only had like a knockoff Tamagotchi pet ever, and I think I ended up taking the batteries out of it after it woke me up at night because I was like, no, this is not fun.
Is this the same sort of like format amongst other games? Is this like you can fit the mold of this over multiple games, or is this more confined to like individual company?
No, you can fit it to whatever your game is, and we'll get into that more as we get later. So basically, for this whole battle pass thing to work, at least with Fortnite, you need to plan your day around it, every day. And if you slack today, that's more work you have to do tomorrow. And I'm sorry, guys, but that's a job. That's what that is. That's what that means. And like I said, I'm being hard on Fortnite, but we'll get into other ones pretty soon. So now I was going to talk about the elephant in the room. If you aren't missing a day, well, I guess I had that structured that way, but we sort of skipped ahead. So if you aren't missing a day, Fortnite is requiring more than an hour to more than 2 hours of your time each day, depending, every single day. But like Daniel pointed out, he's a gamer, not a Fortniter. I have these dumb talking points on my thing to remind me. You like games in general, and maybe sometimes you want to play something else. Epic as a company would have you believe that's not acceptable. But what if the other games that you want to play are all set up like this? So what if I want to play another shooter? Call of Duty Warzone. Daniel, you have to know Call of Duty.
Yes, I have heard of Call of Duty.
Yeah. Call of Duty was huge, especially when you're a kid.
Yep.
That will give you 3 months to invest 75 to 100 hours in their battle pass. So on average, that's about an hour per day, or you're losing out on what you've already paid for. So if you want to play 2 games, Call of Duty and Fortnite, go ahead and add that to your potential 2 hours on Fortnite per day. But maybe you want something more stylized, or your friends really like Apex Legends. That battle pass takes 100 hours, or a little more than an hour per day. Or you want to change genres completely and play some Dead by Daylight, which is one I actually really enjoy. That's a horror game where you play, one person plays as a serial killer and the other 4 have to try and avoid them to escape the little arena you're in. I don't know if you know Dead by Daylight.
Nope.
It's a pretty fun little game. But their season pass will take you 70 to 100 hours in a season that lasts about a month. So you're looking at about 3 hours per day to finish that one. So it seems pretty overwhelming. And the answer at the end of all of it is don't worry, because you can always bust out your credit card. Of course, you can just pay to finish it. If you don't want to miss out on stuff you've already paid for in each game, you could just pay to finish it off. Use your credit card to save time and unlock tiers of battle passes faster or instantly. You could pay to skip the battle pass altogether. So in Fortnite, you can pay 150 V-Bucks, or about $1.50, to skip a tier of your battle pass, and there's 100 tiers. So if you wanted to buy them all and just not play Fortnite that season, which granted, I'm not sure why you would ever do that other than the fear of just missing out. But if you hate playing a game so much, probably just don't. If you're literally not going to play at all. But you could hypothetically pay $160 to just unlock everything and save yourself time. $10 for the pass and $150 for all the other tiers. And of course, you can do this in every game. What are you thinking?
I'm wondering, so I would imagine there's some like video gaming companies that have like a decent battle pass. But I'm just sort of wondering, obviously there's like peer pressure and things when you're younger, but in the larger scheme of gaming, what is the value, like what is the sort of rewards that these are giving you? Is it literally just like, I remember, let me just throw an example out there. When I was younger, there was a reading program at our library
Mm-hmm.
where you would read a certain number of books, and then on a certain day the contest would be over and you'd be allowed to pick these prizes, and they'd hype up these prizes with like cool stickers and stuff, and then you'd get there and it'd be like a skateboard, but it'd be like a skateboard the size of a matchbox car.
I
So like
see.
you'd get all and this is what it feels like, is like you put in all this work and here's like a sticker, versus like here's a new like style of gameplay, here's a new storyline, like here's a secret hidden character or something.
Hmm.
And again, like I was talking about earlier, and maybe I'm just fixated on it, if it was something that I wanted, I'd be okay to pay for it. But when with most games being like $50 to $70 nowadays, that's a lot of money to ask for more when you're offering me is a new T-shirt, or my character gets a tattoo or something. So like, is it like beyond Fortnite? Are these like quote unquote prizes? Are they more significant?
Sure. Even in Fortnite, I don't think that some of them are insignificant. They do things like one of the current ones on offer. Um, and like I've said, you can't just buy this. You got to buy it and then grind to get there. But one of the character skins on offer is Laura Croft from Tomb Raider. And I forget how high up in the battle pass you have to go to unlock that skin. But if you continue to go up and up and up, you eventually unlock more variants of the skin as well. Like, because the first one you unlock is like the current version of Laura Croft. And if you keep going up, you get like the classic version, that has like the polygons and stuff, and all that kind of stuff. So it's not that they're just not trying or skimping out. Like, some of them are neat. I think the top of the battle pass for the current one is Raven from DC Comics. So that's another pretty cool one. That's a character that I'm a pretty big fan of. Um, but as for changing gameplay and things, at least in Fortnite, that doesn't happen so much because it's a battle royale, and they've at least tried to keep it where you don't have an advantage. But there are ones like Genshin Impact that I have less of an understanding of. Genshin Impact gets you different characters, and those different characters each come with their own stories and lore and gameplay styles. I'm sure that the Genshin fans will be happy to roast me in things that I don't fully understand. Because like I said, I've not fully jumped into Genshin. I've played Fortnite a good handful of times, but I haven't jumped into Genshin as much. But as far as I understand, the characters that you're getting from both the Battle Pass and loot boxes and things, they do all have their own lore. They do all have their own weapons and play style. They are all like actually more unique experiences. So that would be more along the lines of, I think, what you would be looking for in terms of meaningful content.
Yeah, and not I had fun the time I played Fortnite. Not sure about all the battle pass stuff, but I know they've done a lot of like characters and stuff that I'd find really cool to have, like a lot of the Marvel and Star Wars characters. But
Yeah,
um,
but a lot of pretty much all those are hid or behind the Battle Pass paywall.
gotcha.
And they are really neat. And like like I said, I'm not gonna like lie to you and pretend that some of them are not neat. Like a lot of the Star Wars, a lot of the comic book character ones, those are really cool ideas. And they never come back around. Like that's part of the whole thing too, is the exclusivity of it. So it's like if you ever want to get in and play as like a stormtrooper from Star Wars, then you need to go ahead and pay in now because you're not going to be able to in the future if you ever are going to play this game.
Wow. I know my little brother was playing Pokemon's Shield, and he had gotten some like exclusive Pokemon. I'm not sure if it was a battle pass or
No, Pokemon hasn't done battle passes yet.
But he had gotten this exclusive Pokemon, and then his account got deleted. Like his Switch broke, and he lost his account, and then he had no interest in going back because he had lost all these like exclusive things he had gotten. So I
Yeah.
think that would be another problem, that your device gets fried and you've lost all these things that you've paid and worked really hard to get. And I think that, especially for a younger person, would really kind of defeat you and make you lose interest pretty quick.
I with Fortnite and things, a lot of these games, it would be more your account getting hacked would probably be the problem.
Wow.
Because if your device breaks, a lot of these are backed up to the cloud. And Nintendo has not been very good about that, but they've started to dip their toes in.
Yeah.
But they have some really weird rules and stipulations around that as well, because they're worried that you'll use it to somehow cheat. But I'm like, who cares?
Like, you have the money?
Well, the way you could do it would be like, let's say I have an exclusive Pokemon like your brother did, and then I trade it to my friend, and I saved to the cloud a backup of my save game. Then I just restore to that backup of the save game, and now I have that rare Pokemon again. But my friend also has it. Gotcha. And so that's cheating, and they don't want you to do that. But like I said, I would rather opt for the security, and I just don't care that much. I think that leads us to maybe a good point to take our break, though.
Mm-hmm.
And when we come back, we'll talk more about how this affects RPGs, where I think this is going, and where it has gone. So stick around for that.
And I will be here to smile and nod. Bye.
Hi there, I'm David.
And I'm Kate.
And we're the hosts of another Zelda podcast.
There are so many good podcasts out there, and some of them in particular concern The Legend of Zelda.
That's right, Kate, and we are another one of them. That is actually the name of our show, Another Zelda Podcast.
And in our show in particular, we talk about some of our favorite dungeons, characters, boss battles. We have top 10 lists.
Yeah, we do deep dives on game design and production aspects of the different Zelda games.
And we talk about our own experiences. We do some review episodes, talk about our challenges, our struggles, and our victories.
That's right. Really just almost anything that has to do with Zelda, we like to talk about it. A new episode comes out every other Friday, and you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and YouTube.
And you can also check out our episodes on our website, anotherzeldapodcast.com.
That's right. All right, we will see you there.
Okay, bye.
Hi, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Mike.
And we are brothers-in-law. We both love beer and are amateur home brewers.
Wait, so does that make us brothers-in-law?
I believe so.
Every episode, we will talk about aspects of beer and home brewing.
But nothing super technical because we're learning this too.
So join us as we sit down together and dive into something beer-related.
Whether it's a little field research, tasting a certain beer style, or beers from a specific brewery.
Talk about our experiences brewing beer at home, including our own solo brews, as well as themed competitions we'll set up along the way.
We will also talk about some of our favorite aspects of brewing, like hops, extra ingredients, building our brew cave, and more. And of course, our own misadventures that have happened along the way.
So, if you like beer, are home brewing already,
or if you have an interest in home brewing and don't know where to start,
join us on Brothers-in-Law Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
And make sure to follow us on Twitter at Brothers-in-Law and check out our website, brothersinlaw.com.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, everybody, we are back to talk battle passes. Alex, I don't know what I'd be talking about, so go right ahead.
Sure thing, Grandpa Daniel. We were talking about during the break how you guys might think he's old, but he's not.
I'm 29 for any particular record.
Unless that is old to you, and then, yeah, he is old.
I just inhabit the body and mind of like a 54-year-old.
I get told that too for other hobbies I'm into, so don't even worry about it. So I figured I would go into we're gonna start with talking a little bit more about why I think this is important for RPG fans to think about. And the reason for that is that if you would have told me when I was playing Chrono Trigger as a kid that it's like, well, we could sell you more chapters of this, but like over the span of months, I think I would have just been really confused. And sort of like Daniel's saying, I know I'm being hard on a lot of these things, but I'm not at all against DLC. DLC can be really, really great. And I'd love to do episodes too, talking about different monetization strategies that I really, really like, because there are some that I think are really, really good. And just to give you a sneak peek of some of those, I think the way Payday 2 has monetized themselves with the developers Overkill Software, I think the way they've done that has been a really interesting experiment that I really like. Some season passes can be really good. A lot of the time it's just a question of quality, but surprising to no one if you've listened to past episodes, I'm definitely a Nintendo person. And so like the season pass for Super Smash Brothers DLC fighters, I felt really confident in buying something like that because everything that they make for that I know is going to be really high quality. And in even just some of our other episodes, Daniel and I have talked about how if Nintendo puts out a game, usually it's not a dumpster fire. Like at bare minimum, you know it's going to turn on, it's going to work, and it's going to be a completed game. And you're not going to feel like you got gypped. It's going to, if you paid $50 for it, it's going to feel like a $50 game. And it might not be more than that, but it will at least feel like a $50 game. And there's a lot of companies you can't say that about. Do you want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, I would agree. I tend to skew more Nintendo also, just because like the legacy of like a lot of the franchise of video games that I like tend to be through Nintendo. So I would agree that when I spend my money, it does feel like I'm getting the value for it, like we talked about in the Pokemon episode.
Yeah, for sure. And there's times that they've done missteps too. A sort of infamous one in the RPG community seems to be the season pass for Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia, which gave you new classes for your characters. Like, you know how, and you're playing Three Houses right now, and you played Sacred Stones. You know how you can promote your characters?
Yep.
You the season pass let you promote them again.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
To like another class?
Like a third time, like going to an over class, I think they were called. And that was something that I thought was like a little weird to not have in the main game, but they were ridiculous and stuff, so I was like, whatever. But the controversy came from the game itself was $40, and I think that season pass was $50. So at least the Fire Emblem fans were like, what on earth are you doing? But I also didn't you can tell me I'm awful and I'm okay with that. I bought it and I didn't totally mind because I get like $50 worth of enjoyment out of all of that insanity? Yeah, probably.
And I think that's maybe an important point in the whole discussion, that it's, if whatever it's offering is worth the time and the effort, go for it. Like
Yeah.
if there is something cool like in Fortnite, I know. Like I don't even play Fortnite, and when they announced they were doing some Marvel superheroes, I was like, well, maybe I should start playing Fortnite.
Yeah. And I do say go for it, but I also say you have to realize that, like I do with Fire Emblem, and Fire Emblem is a series I'm very married to, as Daniel knows. Um, I can realize that like I probably got $50 worth of enjoyment out of that, but I can still objectively point to it and say, well, was that worth more than the game itself in terms of cost? That doesn't make a lot of sense, and I don't think that that was good. And it's sort of the same for Fortnite. You can be a massive Fortnite fan, and I think you have the ability to agree with a lot of the things I'm saying, and you can still be a massive Fortnite fan and still really enjoy it and love it. And I don't think that's bad of you. Like, I don't know. People get very touchy about these things in different fandoms and different communities and things, but I'm not. Daniel and I are both not here to pass judgment. You can do whatever you want to do, and if you're having fun with it, then like, who cares what I said on the internet? You know, you just keep having fun with it.
Yeah.
And more power to you. I will still. I've always tried to sort of. It's not just gaming. I don't know. I care a lot about where my money goes, I guess, and how I spend my money in sort of an ethical sense. And there's times that, like I said, I by my own standards, I'm bad, or I'm hypocritical somewhat. But I'm trying, and so even in gaming and things, there's things that I can still point at and say, because I care about this hobby, it needs to be better, and it can be better. And we can do better.
And I think from what you've described, there's plenty of room to make this super effective, to use a good Pokemon term.
Yeah, an easy one to me would be just making the battle passes you buy in Fortnite permanent. And I know that that gets rid of a lot of the fear of missing out, or FOMO, as it's abbreviated, that they use to keep you playing. That they used to keep you playing like it's a responsibility or like a job. But it would be just a more consumer friendly thing that once you pay however much it costs, and the company themselves is deeming that this content is worth that amount of money, and you're sort of agreeing to that, so you could still let people earn it. That's not even the thing I have the problem with, but the timing, the making it a limited time thing and then it goes away, I think it would work a lot better to do that, to just let you keep playing it. Does that sound like a good fix to you?
Something I would be opposed to, and I'm not even sure if this is quite on the right track, so stop me if I'm really off base here. I think that rather than giving me like another game, like maybe just continue building the game you gave me. So I'm trying to think of a more modern example that's not Tetris.
I have a bunch.
Like Spider-Man came out, and then Spider-Man Miles Morales came out.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they had just kept it one game and just continued to feed me the Miles Morales part of the game, that's something I wouldn't mind. So
Yeah, what you're
rather-
talking about is called games as a service, and there's a lot of those. And some games can be that, and some games can't. One on my list, actually, I've got a whole list of games like that. You got like Destiny 2 is probably one of the biggest ones, or World of Warcraft, things like that. Which World of Warcraft is technically an RPG as well, and maybe Destiny 2 is. They do exactly that. They just continue to release chapters and things, and I don't totally have a problem with that. But the problem always arises in, how are you going to make your money as a developer, and are you going to charge me for things in a way that makes sense, and in a way that I'm happy to keep it going. My favorite, I guess I can just go ahead and jump into it, just because it seems like kind of what you're leaning into. My favorite monetization strategy that's been, other than just pay for it and we're done, or expansions, I mentioned Payday 2 earlier. Are you familiar with that one at all?
No.
That's fine. That was it's not like a giant release, but Payday 2, the way they did things was essentially and I know for you guys out there who played on console, they made a lot of promises for console they didn't follow through on, and that sucks. And you have a right to be mad. But I played on PC, and I liked how they managed it on PC. And the way they did it on PC was um, they would sell characters and story missions to you, but they were all pretty cheap, like $2 to $3 ish, and they would do it in the form of DLCs. And I think they ended up calling it like micro DLCs. And what it all ended up to was I was spending about $15 a month on the game, almost like a subscription. But then it sort of is like the battle pass in that I wanted it to be permanent. If I didn't want to play Payday 2 for a number of months, and that happened, there were times that I just would get out of playing it for a couple months. I could then go back and buy all the things that I missed out on while I was gone, and I could basically catch up for a reduced price, because once they weren't new anymore, the price went down. So they would do like packages, maybe it's $20 total to catch back up. So I would do that, and then I'd have a bunch of new content to keep playing and keep going. And so I thought that was just a really neat way to do that, giving me bits of story that I also didn't have to buy. Because as long as the host of a lobby, it's like 4-person games, 4-person co-op, as long as the host of the lobby has that DLC or that mission, they can host the game and then you can play it, even if you've not paid for it.
What do you think about this idea? And this is just something that popped into my head, and it might be kind of along the ideas of what you're lines of what you're talking about. But what if games were more episodic, where, like, let's say the newest Fire Emblem has come out, and then like you'll get another chunk of the story like once a month or something. So
sure, that's been done as well.
That would kind of work in my head, because then I would be able to play other games without missing out on some big, like, oh, I have to complete it in a certain amount of time or else I'm not getting Marth or whatever.
Or else you just don't get Marth.
Yeah, you don't get Marth, which might not bother that many people, but still.
Yes, that has been done by the company Telltale. I like that this has just turned into like the different ways you can do a game, but that's fine. Telltale did that with their Walking Dead game and pretty much all their games. The Wolf Among Us, I think, is what it's called. Borderlands. They did a Guardians of the Galaxy game. And they're not a company, or they were not a company for a long time, and now they're reforming, but it's not really the same people. And so, fascinatingly, because of Steam, I can see Telltale at the end of every chapter gave you a achievement for finishing that chapter of the game. And so I think it's really neat that I can use Steam achievements globally, which means like across the whole platform, to track how many people have what achievement. And because they gave you an achievement for finishing that part of the game, I can go see how that impacted the player base, and how many people came back for each chapter. So if you complete chapter 1 of episode 1, it says 83.5% of players have done that. So that would mean about 15% of players bought the game and did not even complete chapter 1, episode 1. Which, if you look at like people's Steam libraries, that's actually not bad. If 15% of your players play your game that have it in their Steam library, that's pretty good. 62% of players finished episode 1. So you're already to about, you've lost another 20% at the end of episode 1. Then we go to episode 2. So let's see, 58% of people that came back and did part 1 of episode 2. So you didn't lose that many people, actually. The episodic thing seemed to work. But let's see, how many episodes were there? There's 5 episodes, and if you go to the very end, 40% of people completed the very end. It depends on how you're selling it, I guess. If you want to sell it as a whole package, it might work. but how much do you charge for it, and then how complete is each episode, I guess. It worked kind of to me for The Walking Dead because they charged like $30, I think, for the whole thing. And I'd say it's a $30 experience. It's a really good one, and I highly recommend it if you haven't done it. It's sort of a choose your own adventure sort of thing, like choose your own adventure books. It's sort of that made into a video game. But I would feel weird if they sold like just part 1 and then part 2. Like, I don't know. I don't know how much I'd be willing to invest into it, especially not knowing how many there are. So it could be done well, but the company would just have to be really, really trustworthy, I guess, to make that work. And to jump back to sort of my main talking points with the battle pass things, it usually is not enough to just have a battle pass too. There's still microtransactions in the backgrounds of all of those games I talked about, meaning that there's a story that sells more things, and not everything in each of those games is in the battle pass. For Fortnite, if you want every skin in a season, that's a lot more math that I wasn't willing to do, but I found math for at least season 5. And season 5 would have cost you $450 if you wanted everything. And you don't need every skin in a game, obviously. But it does seem like if you're paying for a game on a nearly monthly basis and playing enough that you got to plan your life around it, I just feel like you as a gamer probably deserve all the content the game has on offer if you're dedicating that much time and money to it. And there's still more games that have battle passes, more than I can list right now. And some of them do it worse and some of them do it better. But just a short list I had was Dota, Smite, Valorant, Rainbow Six Siege, Destiny 2, Genshin Impact, Rocket League, and that's just some of the biggest ones. And that goes all the way from shooters to MOBA games to sports games, like Rocket League I'd call a sports game. And there's still more. But I could see somebody, especially like the mainstream gaming crowd, trying to play all of those. And then do you do battle passes for all of those? It just gets really overwhelming if you want, the Marvel characters for all of those, if they all do cool things like that. And granted, not all of them do, but there is no way that I could close out the show, too, without talking about the future of this. And I don't fully know what that is now, but we saw recently, and I use recently as a very loose term. Recently to me means like the past 5 years, or within 5 years. We saw recently the attempted step up of this, and that was Marvel's Avengers. Are you familiar with that game, Daniel? I know you're kind of a Marvel guy.
Yeah, I love my Marvel comics. I heard a lot about it, and I feel like what I heard a lot of friends talking about it was the coolest 3 days of their lives, and then it was totally over. Is what I feel like I heard about it.
Yeah, I heard similar things. But I was looking forward to seeing your reactions to how insane this monetization strategy gets. So we start with some people don't consider this monetization strategies, but I do. We start with you can buy the game. You had to buy the game. It was $60, but then there's a deluxe edition, and so there's extra skins with that. So already they're cutting content that they had finished out of the game and selling it back to you in a deluxe edition. Then there's a deluxe-er edition called the Mightiest Heroes edition. And that comes with a bunch of little collectible tchotchkes if you just really like Avengers, like keychains and bobbleheads and stuff like that. And that doesn't have to be that bad. All the games we've talked about thus far have had something in common, though. And that's that they're all free to play. They are at least free to download. And I'd argue that you have a worse time if you're not paying, and that they're sort of set up for you to eventually start paying into their Battle Pass systems. But at least mostly all of them are free to download. For Avengers, you're already at the minimum $60 in buying the game. So already people like to talk about entitlement, and that is something that comes up a lot, and I'm sure that that's comments that I might get. But you are. I think you're allowed to be somewhat entitled when you're paying for something. You're entitled to a product that works, bare minimum. Yeah, I mean that's really the bare minimum. You're entitled to something that works to start. But you're also entitled to some level of quality, and in a lot of other things, most governments have some stipulations about like if I go to the store and buy, I've seen people use like teddy bear as an option, a teddy bear, and then the teddy bear is infested with lice. Well, it's like you're not entitled to getting a good teddy bear. You just paid for that. And it's like, well, I don't know. I think I'm entitled when I spend money to get something that doesn't have issues, I guess. But I digress. Then we get into the game itself. And right out the gate, it has not one season pass, not two season passes, or I'm sorry, battle passes, but 6 battle passes going at once. One per character in the game at launch. And they were upfront and said there would be DLC characters, and you'd have to pay for those DLC characters, and then you would have to buy their battle passes separately.
Aside from the money aspect, and we'll get back to that in just a second, but like that's a lot of friggin' crap to have to remember, like figure out.
Yeah, I've been critical of games in the past that some games are so complicated in their release that they need a spreadsheet for you to figure out all of this.
So each character has its own battle pass, and then there's 14 characters, so that's a lot of math.
Yeah.
Beyond the money and the time that's already been mentioned.
It is, and it gets really confusing. And I did write down a side note. They did end up making at least their first DLC characters free, but that was only because there was a lot of pushback on all this. And there's no seasons here, at least. Once you buy a battle pass for a character, you always have it. But to me, this has still been completely ridiculous. And of course, there's still a microtransaction store because we can't put all the cool stuff in a battle pass. So you need to pay more for those things. And the things that are in the battle passes are things like skins, finishing moves, all sorts of stuff like that. And that to me is part of the cool part of like superhero games is having the cool skins from like, I want to be Captain America from that one comic where he joined Hydra and I can use that costume. Or I want to be Captain America in that one where somebody stole his outfit and he had to wear that purple and pink outfit. Like, obviously, I would want to wear that. And the finishing moves, I mean, that's moves from like, that's really a gameplay thing to me. Like, that's combat moves that you're unlocking. So to me, that was a really big thing. The battle pass for each character just sort of feels like you're paying to be able to do challenges every week and track your progress with a character. And that's something that you should really be able to do for the $60 you've already paid if you bought the game, or $80 if you bought the deluxe edition, or $170 if you went for the deluxe edition. And I don't think that this is the future of this, of battle passes, because the game, thankfully, was declared a failure by Disney and Square. They said that there's pretty much no chance of recouping development costs. And I think this is a massive blessing because I can guarantee that if this had done really, really well, more developers would be eyeing the same thing. I mean, can you even imagine every game you play being that? Like, that already, I'm not sure if that would count as an RPG. I'm just not sure. We've had our RPG definition episode, and this fits under some of the definitions and not under others. Because there's definitely levels and things and progression and stats, etc. But can you imagine games like Fire Emblem that it's like, well, yeah, I mean, like, if you want to unlock more characters, like, you need to pay for our battle pass and then play Fire Emblem this month or that character. You're just never going to be able to get them.
I almost wonder, to some extent, RPGs will be not immune to this because there's obviously a couple that are already on your list, but if it'd be harder to kind of pull that off, that sort of structure.
I think somewhat, but I think that part of it is that RPG fans are just less tolerant of those things because we're not I mean, I think you're a very good example of like, you don't care that much about graphics. You're much more willing. Like, if the new games that are coming out are not meeting your standards, you will go back and play things like Chrono Trigger, and you have no problem doing that.
Mhm.
Genres don't have that as much. If you're really into first-person shooters, you got to be playing whatever the current one is.
Yeah.
You're not going to go back and play Call of Duty 2 on the PS2 or something, or like Medal of Honor 3 on the PS2. You're just not going to do that. You're going to play whatever the most recent thing is, because multiplayer is a really big thing, and in RPGs, that's sort of not as much the case, unless you're talking about MMOs, in which that's absolutely the case. But that's a whole other can of worms that I would love to get into on a different episode of this, where we talk about subscriptions and MMOs and how that affects RPGs, and if you enjoy playing those, or maybe not. I don't know. I have lots of mixed feelings about subscriptions and MMOs. But I'm just really glad that, at least for right now, other developers are not going to be eyeing, I think, the battle pass thing, doing multiple battle passes at once too hard, because that just gets super overwhelming. And I can't, like I said, I guess I can imagine some ways that it could be put in RPGs that would be really, really weird. But to me, all this is really weird. I don't even know. Like, for Fire Emblem, maybe you could do like quests that you get every month, and you you can take your team out to try and beat this quest. And if you beat it, you get some extra weapons that are limited time only. But the single player nature of it makes it harder too.
I can't imagine where it'd be like a satisfying experience for anybody, because with the characters in Fire Emblem, like a fair amount of them don't have any story. They'll have like 2 or 3 lines of dialogue that will kind of clue you in as to what the character is about, and then there won't be a lot of additional info on them. So like, if you were like, you can pay this extra money to get these new characters, like they'd have to have a really cool character design to make me want to pay money for them.
It would all be very strange. And maybe you just end up with things like the mobile game, the Fire Emblem mobile game, where you pay, or you could pay to get. That's more of a loot box thing too, though, that you randomly get characters out of sort of loot boxes that then go away, but they always come back. But there's definitely a worry of missing out, that you won't get the characters you want. Outside of just like the tactical ones like Fire Emblem and Shining Force and stuff, I don't know how you do it with something like Skyrim or The Witcher. Potentially the same way. You get limited time quests that you can go off and try to do that get you in-game loot. And you've only got a certain amount of time to complete that quest before it goes away forever, and then you just never get that loot.
It'd have to be like weapons or, yeah, I don't know.
I feel bad if, like, you're an RPG fan. I know some of you guys are completionists, and I feel really bad for you in this day and age, where you try to get every achievement, every character, every item. I can be a completionist sometimes, but I can definitely like turn that off. But I know people in my life that can't turn that off, and they have to be really picky choosy about what games they play, because they realize that that's going to be a really big commitment from them, and they need to make sure not to bite off too big of a commitment. Yeah, I am not jealous of you guys trying to figure out what games to play.
No, there's so many really great options also
Yeah, that's true too.
coming out now that the Battle Pass thing really drives you nuts. There's 14 other games that are cool that could be fun to try out, and maybe that'll lead to some sort of like indie game movement, which would be really, really cool.
Oh yeah. The whole indie scene, I think is going to end up taking over in a big way at some point in the future. And I don't know to what extent, but already we have companies like Nintendo doing entire indie game spotlights and treating them sort of like Nintendo Directs, sort of on par with that, like to announce what indie games are coming to the Switch and showcase a lot of interesting indie games. And I wonder if other publishers and developers will follow suit in getting becoming parts of these things, and just having more and more indie games be a bigger part of the scene as a whole. And I think that's really cool.
Agreed. And I think it's a few episodes from now. I'm not sure exactly where it falls in the continuum, of turn-by-turn episodes, but doing like an indie dev spotlight for a bunch of like indie RPGs that are up and coming.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that too, because it will fill out a lot of what I'm looking forward to in the next years.
Yeah. Any final thoughts to wrap us up?
Yes. So like I said, overall, basically my philosophy in life, it goes for gaming too, but sort of my philosophy in life is, um, you can do what you want to do, essentially, as long as you're not bothering someone else. But remember to have respect for yourself as a consumer and the role that you play in all of this. Monetization strategies like battle passes are manipulative ways, in ways to make you spend money and time, but you don't ever have to. I know lots of your friends. I definitely know some younger people in my life that ended up getting really sucked into things like Fortnite or Apex Legends or Valorant or whatever the big game of the day is, and there always will be at least 10 of them. Um, a lot of younger people in my life got sucked into those because that's what their friends were doing. And it's like, well, I just want to play with my friends. But then, I'm not even sure they really liked the games they were playing all the time. But you never have to play games that you don't want to or spend money on things that you don't want to. You're the most important piece in all this, because if you don't spend money and the game fails, like Avengers, and if you don't play the game because it's not respectful of your time, the game ends up empty, and then it doesn't work either. So, all that just to say, you are the most important piece of the puzzle as the player, because literally none of this works without you. So, just always remember that you deserve some amount of respect, and you are, it's a dirty word, but you are entitled to some amount of respect, at least for yourself. And other people, even if they're game devs, should be decent to you. And if they're not, don't give them your money, because they need you. And there's no way for them to replace the most important element, which is you. So just always have respect for yourself. Spend money on things that you feel like enrich your life. And if it's not enriching your life, maybe don't spend money on it and see how you feel. And that's just sort of my advice from, now I'm sounding like an old man.
And I would just add that something that is incredibly free is our podcast, Turn by Turn. And we talk about a bunch of games that have lots and lots of value that can, at this point, likely in most cases, be acquired incredibly cheaply. So be sure to rate and subscribe. I am trying to be better at plugging our show. So you can check us out on Instagram at the Turn by Turn Podcast, or on YouTube at the Turn by Turn Podcast, or on Facebook at the Turn by Turn Podcast, or any other places where podcasts can be found. All right. Well, I guess that basically wraps us up then. That's it from me and Alex. Have a wonderful day or night.